Welcome to Prevention Through Connection. I'm Kathy Samuels, Project Director for the Manhasset Community Coalition Against Substance Abuse, also known as CASA. Manhasset CASA strives to reach youth before they are in trouble by connecting parents, school, community, and youth as partners in our goal to help teens grow up healthy. As a grant recipient of the Office of National Drug Control Policy's Drug-Free Community Support Program, our mission is to reduce substance use amongst youth and strengthen collaboration among our communities, nonprofit agencies, and governments to support the goals of our community coalition. Today's guest is Don Hooton Sr., President of the Taylor Hooton Foundation. Don is the leading national spokesperson on the issue of appearance and performance-enhancing drug use by our nation's youth. He and his team have spoken to hundreds of thousands of people across the country. High-profile baseball stars like Mets pitcher Dylan Gee and New York Yankees Brett Gardner participate on the Foundation's advisory board, and national partners include Major and Minor Baseball League, the NHL, NFL, National Trainers Athletic Association, and the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and the New York Yankees. Welcome, Don, and thank you for being here today. Don, can you begin telling us exactly what is the problem here in our country, as well as how did you form your foundation?
Well, let's start with how did we form our foundation. We have 3 children, or had 3 children. Our youngest son, Taylor, is a high school baseball player. And at 16 years old, 6'3", 180 pounds, Coach told him he needed to get bigger in order to improve his chances of making the varsity team. And unbeknownst to the coach, and certainly unbeknownst to us, Taylor followed the lead of several of the other players on his baseball team and began using real anabolic steroids. And 7 months later, he died. And as parents, we were shocked to find out how dangerous these drugs really are. We were oblivious to what performance-enhancing drugs, what kind of risk comes along with them. But what shocked us even more than that was finding out how many children in this country are playing with these drugs.
In fact, can you tell us, I mean, we've seen so many statistics on your wonderful website, taylorhooton.org, as far as how many kids in our nation are actually estimated as using steroids.
Let me go through some stats and try to put it into perspective so that our viewers can really comprehend it. The latest numbers come from the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, headquartered right here in New York, and they did a national survey in 2014. And if we think of the total population of high school students, that's boys and girls, athletes and non-athletes, 7% of our kids admit to using anabolic steroids. Now, what do those numbers mean? That means that in a typical high school, 2,000 kids, that's 140 children using these drugs, admitted to using the drugs. That's about 1 per classroom. Now, if we go out and ask our local school officials, problems not going on in my school, problems not going on in our community, and I think they're all answering honestly what they believe, that it's not going on in their school. But Kathy, it's going on everywhere across the country.
You know, I'm curious, you know, across Long Island, across the state, across the country, as far as we can see, the number 1 drug of choice is alcohol. It's readily available, it's in people's refrigerators. But where do kids get steroids from?
Well, if some of the listeners are sitting in front of a computer right this second, go into Google or any of the search engines and type the words buy, as in purchase, buy steroids online. And I predict they're going to get somewhere between 3 and 4 million hits, and spend about 5 minutes looking at some of the sites, and you'll find out how easy it is for our children to order the drugs,
yeah.
get them delivered.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's too much trouble, I would suggest that in every public gym, Fitness 24, Gold's Gym, it's not about picking out particular name brands of gym, it's just suggesting that in any gym, just visualize where the big guys are working out, the guys with the muscle shirts and the free weights. You can just assume that anabolic steroids are being sold back there. Our son Taylor bought his at our local YMCA. And as moms, is there a safer place to send your kids?
Taylor, a typical child, age 15, going to baseball practice, taking steroids. Tell us his story. Tell us what happened and the tragedy for your family.
Taylor's older brother, Donald, played Division I baseball. Always, so he's looking up to his older brother who's playing very, very competitive baseball. Taylor played baseball from the time he was in T-ball and then the Little League, made the All-Star team in every league he ever played in, had a pretty good bat. And Taylor was, my job took us all over the country, and we moved to competitive North Texas in the Dallas area, where football is everything. Baseball's a far second, but everything is competitive. Competitive adults, competitive kids, everybody's got the bigger, faster car, the nicer looking girlfriend, everything that goes along with a competitive environment, much like I've seen since we've been here this week here on Long Island. I mean, just a very, upper middle class, very fast-paced environment for these kids. And different than other drugs, these kids, like Taylor, he didn't turn to drugs to get high or to party on the weekend. He did it because he thought it would make him bigger and faster and stronger.
Right. And these drugs have a cost associated with it in terms of physically for kids, mentally. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened with Taylor?
Yeah. What we saw, we didn't know at the time, was caused by steroids. We just saw a young man that his behavior changed dramatically. We didn't know what to call them at the time, but what we were seeing were roid rages. Okay. Mom coming in and telling Taylor, it's 11 o'clock, you got to get off the computer, it's time to go to bed, or you got to do your homework. And Taylor, on multiple occasions, would slam his fist down on a table, curse at his mom, and that just isn't the type of behavior. So we'd see the roid rages. When we finally figured out what the problem was, a psychiatrist finally diagnosed the problem after 2 other doctors had missed it, and she had him quit cold turkey. And then the roid rages, right out of the medical textbook, turned from aggressive behavior to depression. And the depression became serious enough that Taylor took 2 belts and hung himself in his bedroom where his mom found him. And it was then that we discovered, and what a terrible way to learn how dangerous these drugs can be.
Oh, and such a tragedy for your family. We are so sorry for your loss and so thankful that your family has dedicated themselves to this cause of educating kids and families across our country to the dangers of steroid use. I wanted to get back to where the kids are getting the steroid use. You mentioned they go online, accessing them. So are they ordering them from the local pharmacy? Are they ordering them from the guy down the block? Where exactly are all of these performance enhancement drugs coming from?
Great question, and a very important question, because most people, when they think anabolic steroids, think about, well, it must be something that's coming through the back door of the pharmacy, or there's some doctor prescribing them, and nothing could be further from the truth. I'm sure there are some like that, but the overwhelming majority are just like other street drugs. This stuff in particular, most of it comes from China. It comes in cardboard boxes. It comes in as a powder. The local dealer that's either running the website or selling them at the gym mixes them with oils before they're put into vials. And in this case, they're mixed with Wesson oil or sesame seed oil, peanut oil. We've heard cases of these dealers mixing them with horse urine or with Armor oil.
Now, the point about horse urine is it's an oil based. I mean, a lot of people say horse urine, how
well,
could that be an oil?
We had a DEA agent tell us about busting a website that was selling this stuff, and he says, well, horse urine, it feels real oily, and we kind of laughed and said, I don't know, I've never felt horse urine, but apparently it's a very thick, oil-based substance that they mix.
That the dealers are mixing, and they're putting all sorts of things in it, and kids, I think it's almost the same as the prescription drug epidemic that we've been seeing here. People, kids, adults think that it's prescribed, then it must be safe. And I think, again, with going on the internet, not knowing where any of these things are coming from without a prescription, it's quite dangerous to their health, and we don't know what's in them.
Well, that's right, and the kids see their favorite professional athlete in any sport getting caught using this stuff, and the kids think they're getting the same stuff that their professional athlete is getting, and that's not the case. It may be called the same, may be called Decadurabolin or Winstrol or whatever the different names of the steroids are, but they are not getting the medicinal or pharmaceutical grade steroids that the big guys are getting.
Right, and of course all of the steroid use is illegal under all of these rules of baseball, football, hockey. I wanted to just know, in terms of the amount of support the Taylor Hooton Foundation has had from the professional sports leagues. If you could tell us a little bit about that before we go maybe to some teen questions. We've got teens here in the audience who wanted to ask you something.
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I'm extremely proud of the job that Major League Baseball has done in support of us. There have been others that I'll tell you about, but Commissioner Seelig and now Commissioner Manfred, we've been working with those two gentlemen now going on 10 years. Major League Baseball, as Commissioner Seelig told me, understands they have a profound social responsibility to the youth of the country. So they have provided us the financial support that we've needed along the way, as well as now we are in the process of filling out an advisory board full of all 30 teams are putting up some of their best athletes to step forward and become role models, positive role models, to talk to the kids and send public service announcement type messages about it's possible to make it to the top and be some of the very biggest guys without having to resort to drugs. But the NHL is behind us, the NFL is behind us, National Baseball Hall of Fame. We're just very pleased with the kind of support that we've gotten across the board.
Do you see the tide turning in terms of that, in terms of, you know, in our country it just seems everybody is trying to be much healthier than maybe in years past, decade to decade, and I'm curious if with that health aspect, are you seeing that the major sports leagues and the people who are coming up through the ranks are actually following that lead?
I would love to tell you that the situation's getting better with the kids. It's not, it's getting worse. The good news is, though, the major sports league, and I can speak with great authority about Major League Baseball, they're not 100% driven out of the sport yet, but they are serious about the problem, have spent tons of dollars and programs to drive it out of the league. And I would say, I mean, they've got the toughest testing and education program in professional sports, and if it's not gone yet, there's very little of it left. And we're hoping that all of the other leagues will be following in their footsteps.
That's great. I know one of the other things that you talk about across the country are protein supplements as well as energy drinks. And I was curious if you could touch on them before, again, we take some teen questions here in the studio.
Let me start with supplements a minute. And for the audience, what we're talking about are protein shakes, creatine, all of the bodybuilding powders and liquids that they're buying at the local health food store to help them get bigger. Numbers are consistent that about 20 to 25%, 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 4 of those products that mom, that you're buying for your kid at the local health food store in the mall are spiked with banned substances like anabolic steroids. If your kids bought one of these products and they're starting to see their muscles grow after they start to use these products that you're buying over the counter that you think are safe, it's highly likely.
So how's that happening? How can that be happening in the United States of America?
They're not regulated.
They're not regulated.
Period. There's the Food and Drug Administration. There is nobody that's in charge of making sure that what's listed on the label of the container is in the container. You can take the container to the family physician, you can take them to your coach, to your athletic trainer, and they can look at the label and it looks like there's nothing in that container that shouldn't be there,
Right.
but that doesn't mean it's not in the container.
Gotcha. And energy drinks. Everybody, there are all sorts of trucks hitting delis, supermarkets with these highly caffeinated drinks. We know from our friends at North Shore LAJ Feinstein Institute, Dr. Stephen Dewey, that it takes almost 48 hours for the brain to actually come down to normalcy after you have one of these things. Tell us about your work with energy drinks and what you see going on.
Well, let's start with the fact that the American Medical Association has got an active effort on to make sure that kids under 18 years of age can't get access to these things. I know that upsets a lot of people listening to us, but that's the truth. Now, why would that be? First of all, it's not just caffeine, but it's caffeine at dozens of times the level that you get in a caffeine shot with espresso or coffee or hot tea. But not only that, these typical energy drinks is loaded with substances like guarana and taurine. Well, what is that? Those are substances that are put in these drinks to supercharge or turbocharge the stimulative effect of the caffeine. And there have been a number of documented deaths around the country. I think there's over, is it 20,000 emergency room visits a year?
The Dawn report is showing that through SAMHSA. I mean, we are seeing more and more emergency room visits by kids, by adults who are drinking energy drinks.
And they've become so prevalent that few people that I talk to are even aware that it's something they should be concerned about. It's all around us.
It's sometimes I think we all think about coffee. We think, well, what could be wrong with a cup of coffee or a double shot of coffee? You know, we've got different coffee shops at every corner here. But I think that as we go through, time going forward, we're going to see more and more, hopefully not more and more of these, as you educate people across the country to the dangers. At this time, I think it's a good time maybe to turn to some of our teens here in the studio. We have a number of teens from high schools here on the North Shore, and they have a few questions for you with regards to your work.
Great.
And we're going to take it away to our first teen.
Hi, my name is Jason. So my first question is, are the steroids sold on the street real steroids?
That's a great question, Jason. Yes, they are, and no, they're not. They're real in the sense that the chemical makeup in them does the same thing that real steroids do, but they're counterfeit in the sense that they're not made, typical pharmaceutical grade steroid is made, picture the little guys and gals in their white lab coats working in a clean room in a laboratory that are developing these drugs. These drugs are mixed up in somebody's basement or garage in very unsanitary environments. So while they have the same effect, they make your muscles get bigger, they've got a whole lot of different effects they have on the body, they're very much counterfeit. To be honest, for most of them that are sold on the street, unless you took them to a chemist and had them analyze it, you really don't know what's in that vial.
My second question, is it safe to take the natural steroids or supplements sold at a health food store?
Got to be very careful what you purchase at the local health food store. There are two resources that I'd like to suggest that parents look to before they allow their kids to be buying this stuff at the health food store. One, there's a company called NSF, Nancy, Sam, Fred, nsfsport.com. This is an independent, nonprofit group that the good companies turn to have their products checked so that they can put an NSF label on there certifying that their products are safe. If you're going to take supplements, at least make sure they're on the list. Another one is Aegis Labs, AEGIS. They also, if you go to their website, there's a application that you can put on your smartphone so that when you go into the supplement store, you can take a picture of the barcode on the label, and it will tell you if there are any substances on the label that are on the banned substances list. So there are a couple of resources that you ought to at least check before you go into the health food store.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Hello, my name's Aaron Banwer, and I had a couple questions to ask you. What are the health side effects of anabolic steroids?
There are many, many, but let's just pick one or two to talk about. Question I ask the kids is if you inject yourself, and that's another, most of these are injectable drugs. If you inject yourself with a muscle-building substance and it circulates through your body, are the only muscles that are getting bigger are the ones you can see on the outside? And of course the obvious answer is no. The most important muscle is your heart. It gets bigger too, significantly bigger. An enlarged heart is one of the definitions of heart disease. It doesn't pump blood like it's supposed to. High blood pressure results, increased chance of stroke and heart attack. The kidneys are damaged, the liver. There are all kinds of things that happen on the outside of your body, severe acne. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying there's a whole lot of negative things happening to your body and to your mind, by the way, besides just your muscles, getting bigger and beginning to look, get that more athletic look. Very dangerous drugs.
My second question is, do these side effects, are they permanent?
Some of the side effects are permanent, some are temporary. For example, for the girls, and it's crazy, but the girls are using these drugs. One of the side effects of the girls is their voice gets deeper. Because it turns, this testosterone, these steroids begin to turn them into guys. Once the girl's voice goes down, it stays that way. Now, some of the heart problems are permanent. Some of the other problems, depends on, they vary. But the consensus of the docs is a decision to use steroids will result in shortness, your overall life expectancy is shortened.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before our next team comes on, I just was curious in terms of some of your statistics about girls and guys, because I think, we often see a lot of the sports athletes, they tend to be men, they're more advertised, but what are we seeing in terms of girls across the country?
Well, they're just right behind the guys in terms of percentages. The overall range of the boys is in the 7 to 8% range. The girls are in the 5 to 6% range. So and now they're not doing it to get the big muscular look. Some of them are, but most of them are looking to get the six-pack look in the abs, and they're using drugs like Winstrol that cut the muscle instead of build the muscle. It's crazy. Here's another interesting statistic. For our gay and bisexual boys, the number is 21%. 1 out of 5 of our gay and bisexual high school student males admit to using this stuff, and the answer should be pretty obvious. These young men have a more than normal obsession with body image, and unbelievable numbers of them are actively using these drugs to improve their looks. It's crazy.
I think kids make hasty decisions, and I think that it's part of our job, as adults and parents, to help our kids make healthier decisions as they're growing up. And we want to just turn to one of our last teens here, who's got some questions too.
My name's Amanda, and I wanted to ask, why are steroids banned?
Steroids are banned for 3 reasons. First, they're banned in every legitimate sport, period. There's no exceptions to that. Number 1, it's cheating. And I hope we don't have to explain to the audience today that if it's against the rules, we shouldn't be doing it, whether it be at an individual level or a team level. Second, they're illegal. Most of our young people don't realize that these are just as illegal as most of the other drugs that we talk to them about. And finally, They're banned because they're dangerous, because of some of the problems we've already talked about. But in the end, even if they weren't against the rules, even if they weren't banned with proper education, we're hoping that most folks that are susceptible to using these drugs won't do it.
Okay, and my second question is, when did steroids emerge in sports as kind of, when did they kind of gain popularity?
That's a great question. I think for the older listeners, older being folks like me that are here, will remember back in the 60s with the German swimmers, that during the Olympics, the girls were unknowingly given steroids, and most of them had severe long-term consequences. But they emerged into the Olympics and then into professional sports. But in the last 10 to 12 years, this stuff has permeated down through the colleges and into the high schools. And it's pervasive. And even though now we're starting to really wipe this thing out at the professional level, we've got so many kids doing it, it's going to be very difficult to get the horses back in the barn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda, and thanks to all the teens here at Public Access Television for being a part of today's program. Before we close up, Don, I just wanted to talk a little bit about parents. What can parents do at home? Are there any signs that they should be aware of?
The most important thing I want to leave parents with is recognize how widespread the problem is, and don't just assume because I've got good kids that they wouldn't be doing this. We made that mistake and learned the hard way. Look for some of the most obvious signs of sudden growth, especially with the boys. Acne on the back. Taylor put on 30 pounds of muscle in 90 days. It's just not possible. Sudden desire to work out at the gym. Without these drugs, they can't work out 2 and 3 times a day. It's just not possible. He had bad breath. There's a number of signs that with a little bit of reading, they're pretty easy to spot. I would encourage, the viewers to go to our website. Our website's been up. All of that information is there. Here's a controversial one. Search your kid's room, not just for steroids, but for other drugs. We made a mistake. We gave our children a zone of privacy and didn't go look, in their secret places in their rooms. If we had, we would have spotted the fact that Taylor was using anabolic steroids. But that applies to all drugs, and I would encourage parents to do that. But recognize it's going on in the kids' schools. Recognize that some of their friends are doing this. And even if they're not now, I promise you, when they go off to college, they will be exposed to these drugs. Talk to them. Talk to them once, talk to them twice, talk to them regularly.
Right. And is there anything as communities that we can do to combat this issue in terms of the drugs and just the availability of it?
I think the most important, bottom of my heart believe the most important thing we can do is what we did here today, which is talking to the kids and educating them. Most of these kids, 85% of our children report they've never had anybody talk to them about performance-enhancing drugs. And we could talk about it, but we don't have time about all of the messages that are being sent to our kids about, just think about what we call them, performance-enhancing drugs. What could be wrong with something that's performance-enhancing? But we need to be educating our kids in the schools, in the athletic programs, and at home across the dinner table.
Great. Thank you so much, Don, for being with us today. I think our time is up for today's program. And again, we'd like to thank Don Hooton Sr. and the Taylor Hooton Foundation for their work to combat steroid abuse across our communities, as well as the staff and teens here at Public Access TV. We hope today's program has been informative, as steroid use often goes unnoticed by parents, coaches, and caregivers. For additional resources, please go to the taylorhooton.org website or manhaseccasa.org. Since 2001, the Manhasset Community Coalition Against Substance Abuse has existed in the Manhasset community as a resource to reduce the illegal underage use of alcohol, tobacco, prescription drugs. Manhasset CASA is a 501c3 corporation and is registered with the New York State Charities Bureau. If you would like to make a donation to support our efforts in the community, please go to our website and follow the link to donate on our homepage. Donations are tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law. And until next time, This is Kathy Samuels, Project Director with the Manhasset CASA, wishing you and your family a healthy and safe tomorrow. Thank you.